Okay, so let's say, so what we have here is information about many different kinds of subpopulations. We have information about whether a student is in liberal arts, business. We have information about their GPA, information about their age, their height, information about their attitude about a probability question. We have information about their gender, although I want to mention my pet peeve is the word gender is incorrectly used. Gender is a grammatical term. It's sex is the word, and you shouldn't be afraid to use the word sex in your classes. It'll make your students wake up. So it's sex. Sex, sex, sex. Don't forget to use that word. So speaking of sex, since I just mentioned it about 8 times, why don't we extract the males from this list? Okay. So in other words, what I want to do, I want to compute GPA, age, height, weight, every possible variable, but only for men. Okay. Now, one way to do it, let's say I just wanted to get weight in pounds. One way to extract weight in pounds would be to use the if function, and I want to do that just to review how that works. Okay. So, thank you. So let's say you just wanted to get the weight in pounds of all the men. Okay, and just get a column of men weights, and you then to do medians, means, histograms, whatever you want to do. So if you wanted to do that, then at this point, what you would what you could do is use the if function. So one thing to do is maybe to take this data here and just copy it elsewhere. So I do a shift click selection, then a control C for copy, and then I want to paste it somewhere else just to get it out of the way. I'll open a new workbook up in the upper left. That opens a new workbook. And that's a standard Microsoft command, I think, for opening a new thing. You can find it in other software. I open a new workbook, and then I paste it, and there it is. So I have my column of thank you of male and female weights, and then to use the if function as a filter, I type in the formula here equals if. Remember the syntax, it has 3 parts. The first is the Boolean, the true-false part. So what do we want to check? We want to check for if the sex variable is the male value. So we'd say if cell A5 equals 1, comma, then the executable thing for true, and that would be to put the weight, and that would be the cell, just, display the cell B5. Am I doing that right? It should be if A5 equals 1. If A5 equals 1, B5. Otherwise, what should we display? We should display nothing. So that would be quote, quote, just nothing in between quotes. If you have trouble seeing this, I'll zoom it up. Okay, so there's the formula. It's saying if this cell has the value 1, then what we'll be displaying is the value B5, which would be the weight. Otherwise, if we go quote, quote, which means display nothing at all. And so when I hit the Enter key, I should get nothing at all. And sure enough, I do. And then all that I need to do is drag this formula all the way down. And the easiest way to do it would be to shift-click down to the bottom of my column. So shift and then click. I've selected it all. I have a formula in here. It doesn't look like anything, but there's an active formula. And then I go to the Edit menu and fill down. That's Control D. And I still don't seem to see anything, but that's because there aren't a whole lot of men. This was University of San Francisco data, and it's about 60-40 women. But there are the men weights, and they appeared. Let's say that you didn't like this fill down procedure. Another way of doing it would be you have your formula that you like there, then you do a black cross drag all the way down. That works just as well. It's exactly equivalent, and you get exactly the same thing. So that's using the if function to filter, and it works nice. It's a nice sort of cheap way of filtering, but it's not a good way of filtering for heavy duty work, because all I was able to do was filter just the gender, just the weight based on the sex. So let's go back to the original workbook. You find that use the window menu to go back to the intermediates workbook, and let's do something a little more interesting. So let's select all the data we're interested in. Since I don't want to use up the entire screen, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. Let's just take, say, the information up through hours of exercise. So I'll select all the data. So from cell A7 all the way to cell H42, and then what I'm going to do is filter it. And filtering is something you do with data, and so it's in the data menu. And if you're not sure where it is, just remember there's this thing called filtering, and then look for it. Don't use the help menu whenever don't use the help keys, because those really just waste your time. It's better to search for things on your own. And it's in data, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, sure enough, there's filter. And what I want is auto filter. There's an advanced filter, but I don't understand it. It's too complicated. So I've never used it. So auto filter is plenty sophisticated for most purposes. So we click on auto filter, and we get this nice nice appearing situation here. Notice how there are these tabs that suddenly appeared everywhere. Now what we're going to do is pick one of the columns and extract things from it. So just go to the gender column, column F, and click on that tab there. And what you'll see are a bunch of choices, and if you read them, you'll realize what they seem to be. All kind of is self-explanatory. Top 10 and custom don't make any sense to me, but 1 and 2 make sense, and so does mode, because 1, 2, and mode appear in that column. Okay. Let's just let up on this tab, and so click somewhere else and move to, say, age and years. And what do you think you'd see there if you clicked on the tab? You'd see all the different ages that appear, including the word median, because that also exists in the column. Okay, so by now you can pretty much imagine what you do next. So let's go back to the gender column, column F. Click on that tab and let's select the men. So you just go to 1 and you click on it. And now, then I moved away from my selection and clicked away. Now what you'll notice is the left-hand side, the row numbers are blue, and you'll also notice that well, for some reason this first one is still a 2. Well, I think I know why. But anyway, the rest of them are 1s. I think I know how to get rid of that 2 at the top. Let me undo what I did. So I just click Control Z, and I'll go back to the intermediates. Do it again. Not sure what I'm doing here. All right, I'm going to undo my filtering. How do you think you undo filtering? It's filtered because there's this filtering situation. How do I undo it? It's always important when you're learning a new thing to know how to undo it too. So where's the off switch? Exactly. You go back up there, go back to filter, and it's a toggle. See, there's the check thing. So just click it again and it unchecks, unfiltered. So let me see what happens if I just try to hit filter without even selecting data. I think that I can probably even do that. No. Okay. Perhaps what I should do is include the top row of my data rather than start with the data. So I'm starting one up above. And then I'll go to data, then I'll go to filter, click on auto filter. Okay, I like the look of that better. So now if I click on this, let's see what I get. Yeah. So the tab is above the data. So now when I filter, I'll get just the data cells there. So if I click on 1, sure enough, I filter out all the men. Okay, that's a minor detail. The important thing is right now what I have is completely filtered data. Okay, but you have to be a little careful. If you try to crunch the data right now, you won't get the results you need. For example, if I were to try to count the number of cells in here using the count function, it would not give me the number of men. It would just give me the total number of cells from beginning to end. What I need to do is take this data now, this completely filtered data. So I'll select going from here out to here. And now I'll take this once again and I'll copy it somewhere and put it somewhere else. So I'll go copy, Control C, and then let's move to that other workbook because we don't really need it. Move to another sheet of it, and then we'll paste our results. And this is the fully filtered male data. So what I have here is all the information about the men. And then you can do whatever your heart desires with this. You can create histograms. You can compute medians, means, whatever. You can compute a male statistic, then go back and compute a female statistic and do hypothesis testing. The applications at this point are up to you. The important thing is this one Excel skill so that you can do this in the future. So have you been able to do it on your computers down here? Okay, it's very sophisticated, and you can and it has lots and lots of potential. So this is just a very simple example. Any questions about this? Okay, well let's move on to the next exercise, which I personally, my favorite thing that I like to do with computer simulation is anything with randomness. I just think it's fun, I think it's also very entertaining for the students, because whenever you talk about things like random walks, you can start talking to them about things that are interesting to them, like the lottery or gambling, or just anything involving chance and fortune. I think my students always pay attention for that, and they tend to, when I talk about median heights and weights, they tend to get bored. But when I talk about lotteries and fortunes, they seem to get much more interested. So in one of our earlier sessions, there was an exercise to create a random walk. Let's review quickly how that was done. So what you see here is a very simple random walk with where the step at any given stage is a uniformly distributed random number whose mean is 0. And the way I know that is this column A is the step size, and if we click on that, we get the random function. Let me blow up the screen. We get the formula is random equal random parentheses parentheses, so just a random number between 0 and 1, but I subtract 0.5 from it. So it's uniformly distributed. You can go between plus and minus 1 half. And so I compute the random numbers in here. I computed about 50 of them. And then I have a running sum. I start with 0, and then each successive cell is just equal to the sum of the preceding partial sum plus the random step size, and that's what we graph. We keep track of this sum, and and in order to do it, we used a line chart using the chart wizard, where our data was just the sum values. So again, even to review using chart wizard here, let's delete the chart and quickly create the random walk picture. So I'll select the data. You go to the chart wizard and ask for a line graph. I don't want the little markers, so I'll get rid of that. Move to the next one, and that looks pretty much like what I want, and I don't want a legend, so I'll say no. And I'll finish it off and insert it in there, and then I'll get rid of all these stupid menus and toolbars. Make it a little bigger. One thing that is helpful if we want to recalculate the random walk. So remember, to recalculate all of your formulas, you type the F9 key, or preferably Shift F9, so it just does it in your worksheet. And I did that and nothing happened. Okay, so what did I do wrong? It's frozen. Exactly, I've selected the graph, and so I need to not select the graph. And remember, sort of the fundamental ways to get out of a screw-up, your checklist of things to do is the escape key, Control Z, hitting the return key or just moving the mouse away from where it is and clicking it. And moving the mouse away from where it is and clicking it will unselect the graph, and now we're back to, I don't know what you'd call it, but default mode, or, you know, command mode, calculate mode. But you can make up a name for it. And then if I do, I don't know. Oh, I hit Control F9 rather than Shift F9, and Control F9 probably did something else. Yeah, it closed that window. That's an easy mistake to make. Anyway, Shift F9, however, Shift F9 should recalculate. And sure enough, I keep getting a different random walk. It's hard to compare one random walk with the next, though, because our axis changes to sort of fit the graph. So a good thing to do is to standardize our axis here. So I double click on it, go to Scale, and the checks here mean it is automatic, which means it will adjust depending on the data. So instead of doing that, I'll give it its own values. I'll go say -5, tab over here to +5, and then click OK. And now when I do my Shift F9, it's much more easy to compare and see all these different possible scenarios. And this is really quite instructive for students to see how the random walk evolves. Okay, well, the exercise here is to adjust this so that instead of it being a zero-sum game, that it's a stock, say, that has an expected daily gain. And you should be able to do this in just a matter of minutes. In fact, what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do it. I just want you to do it. I have some guidelines for how it might work, but all you need to do is in here, change your random variable. Do a little math to it to give it some drift, and you can choose any kind of method you want. I suggest something in here, but you don't have to use my method. What would give you some sort of a drift that would be comparable to a stock market thing? Imagine that this is daily change, and we have a stock that we expect is going to go up 12% a year. So there's what would be something that you'd want to try? Would you want to add, first of all? Would you be adding step to get the new value? Would it be would you be adding a certain random variable? You could, certainly. It would be a little bit simplistic. We need to have a starting price, so let's give it a starting price. 0's too low. How about $100? Okay, and we completely ruined our graph here because of the axis. So I'll just click on auto for now, because I don't really know how it's going to evolve. Okay, so I have there we got lucky. Started at 100, went up to 102 in 50 days. But remember, we haven't actually yet let it evolve as a normal as a stock that actually rises. So what should the random number do? This random number has an expected the expected step size is 0. So at the very least, we should give it a positive expected step size. So what would be an easy way to fix that? This is really a no-brainer here to do the most simple-minded approach here. Well, the idea is to have a random walk with upward drift, so that you'd expect to. So right here we got lucky. See, in this scenario here we got lucky. We ended up ending above where we started.
Why would you expect stock to always go up?
Well, that's a different issue. That's a financial issue. But I mean, I think you could say that the majority of American investors have that expectation. Because actually, I think you can expect stocks to at least go up as fast as say savings bonds. You know, that's a really reasonable assumption in the long run. And so, I mean, an interesting question is, how do you model a random thing with an upward drift? And you know, there's many. You know, we shouldn't really get into the mathematical details of this, but you can see with this model here, half the time you're going to end up above 100, half the time you're going to end up below 100. I mean, that's as it should be, you know. And if you were to look at those endpoints and look at their distribution, it would be a normal distribution. But so if you wanted to model something a little bit more realistic, what you could do in place of this random variable here, you could, instead of subtract 0.5, you could subtract 0.49. And then it would have an expected value that's a little bit positive. And that would be sort of your first approximation. Say we did say 0.48 or something like that. And then don't forget to drag the formula all the way down so that you're using it everywhere. So I do shift click and then control D for filling down. And now if I were to run this scenario a few times, you will notice that you are more frequently ending up prospering than before, but not completely so, because it's still a fairly small drift. But if we had a longer term, if we had a longer term, you would notice that essentially the random walk would look like a line, because it's sort of it's an expected linear change. To do this a little more realistically, what we really want is not what we would want is not a linear curve, a linear graph with noise. What we'd want is an exponential graph with noise. And so to do it in a little more elaborate way, and I outlined this in a tiny bit, is instead of adding each time, you'd multiply. So, you know, if you wanted to go up by 12%, in the end you'd want it to go up by 1.12, multiplied by 1.12. And if you were evolving it over 50 days, that if you were looking at the daily change then would be multiply on the average by this 1.12 raised to the 1 over 300 or 1 over 250, however many business days there are. So that would be a way to model the stock market. And so this is a very easy thing to do, and you can. It's just a fun simulation that's extremely simple to do. So, is any questions about this? Yes, sir. Oh, so you have the graph. Yeah. And did you try moving the mouse away from the graph and clicking it? And then try that, and then try the Shift F9 key. And the Shift F9 key, what it does is it recalculates all the formulas in your worksheet. If you do the F9 key, it recalculates all the formulas in all the open workbooks. And if you're doing a lot of probability simulation and you have a slow computer, then you've just killed your afternoon when you do that. With a Pentium, it's usually pretty good. Did that work? No. Okay. Let me. Oh, okay. Well, I'll come back and help you in just a second. Why don't we move on to the final thing, which is the birthday problem. But I'm a little worried because we had this foul up with not being able to get the software. We might be needing we're going to need the sampling add-in. If you go to your tools menu, do you see SRS at the bottom? When you go to the tools menu, you have it on?
Yeah, I put it on.
Oh, you put it on because you saved it on your diskette?
No, I used one of your other instructions about these add-ins, and I did.
Oh, and it's on your computer right now? Because I thought that the problem was that we weren't able to open them from the, we're missing that folder. On the M drive?
Let me just see what I did. I went to add-ins on the tools.
Oh, now it's back.
Yeah, see?
What happened? I don't get it. Huh. Okay. Yes. So you will be able to. So what you should do right now is go into the folders and get the SRS program and open that. SRS.xla. That's the sample. Yeah. It might be on your tool already. Okay. So whatever happened was you killed it. So we just did it. Okay, have you all loaded the SRS thing? And remember, I mean, these are those add-ins are presents to you. You can use them for your own use. Take them home with you and play with them. If you want to use them in classes and on other computers, then you'd be breaking the law. And if you did that, you should buy my book. And then I don't really care about the law as much as you buy my book. No, actually, I do care about that because it's being a pirate is a bad thing. Okay, so let's. Excuse me. You don't have the data to the data. You were running open. Yeah. But oh, there it is. That's SRS. Yeah. Oh, you already have it. So you have it. Oh, I see. Yeah, you'll know that you have it because now in your tools menu there'll be the word SRS. So you have this. Feature for doing simple random samples. It's at the bottom here. Okay, so what I wanted to take you through is an example of a fairly sophisticated process, and this is something that you might not necessarily want to have your students do, but it's something you might want to do if you wanted to do a fairly sophisticated demonstration. And depending on the kind of class you had, it's something you might want your students to do. In Excel, it's possible to record what you're doing and save it as a miniature computer program, and that's sometimes a very useful thing to do because you might want to repeat an action many times or do something in a real sophisticated way. So what was thinking of is let's try to model the famous birthday problem that you all know. You know, the probability that if you have a bunch of people in a room, what's the probability that two of them have the same birthday? I'm sure that you discussed this problem with your statistics classes, and the students always, at least at the beginning of the semester, give the wrong answer unless they can read your voice and know that the wrong answer is not that the obvious answer is not correct. And then they'll play this game with you. But and when you do a calculation to show them what the probabilities are, that's one way of understanding it. But another way would be to do some active simulation. Now, certainly you can simulate with your class, since you whenever I've had a class of say 35 students that have done this birthday thing, I've never lost, which makes sense since the probability of matches is well over 90%. But it's fun to try to simulate this with a computer as well. And so the idea is really very simple. What you have is the set of numbers that you would want to sample from would be the integers from 1 to 365 inclusive. And then let's say we wanted to have a class with, I guess in this case here I have 24 people in a class. Well, then what you'd have is a sample of size 24. And that would be one class. Well, the beauty of the computer is that why not get a bunch of samples and then look at the birthday problem for each sample. So this is an example of an output already. But before we look at this example, let's insert a new worksheet and start the process ourselves. So you go to the Insert menu, because we only have 3 worksheets on this workbook. Let's insert a new worksheet. So Insert a worksheet. And our first task is to write the numbers from 1 to 365. Okay. Well, one way to do it is to start by typing a 1, and then underneath it put a 2, and then select both cells and black cross drag it, and you'll notice that it starts incrementing properly. You know, so you can increment it down, and you could do it pretty quickly, and even though it's sort of inelegant to drag like this, you get your 365 without any trouble. Okay, make sure you can do that. But then let's move back up to the top of the screen, and try to do it in a couple of other ways. Okay, was everyone able to do that? So again, the way that you first type a 1, then type a 2, then select both the 1 and the 2, and then black cross drag that, and Excel automatically figures, oh, okay, it's a series starting with 1 and then going to 2, and we'll just do what we think we should do, which is to go by 1 and start dragging. Another way you could do it would be to start with the number 1, and then underneath it write the appropriate formula to generate the next number. If you want to think more algebraically, well, what is the formula? It is equals previous cell plus 1, of course. And then you click on that, you get a 2, and now you just black cross drag this cell because you're black cross dragging a single formula, and again it will do just what you'd expect. Okay, and you can drag it down to 365. Okay. The third method is perhaps a new method for you, and it's the most versatile, and it's a useful thing to know. We start with a 1 just as we did before, and then I've selected that 1, but instead of black, and what do you think would happen if we black cross drag the 1? Well, Excel isn't as smart as you think. Excel would just think, oh, okay, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay, which is too bad. It's a shame it doesn't do that. But so we go to the Edit menu, because that's where filling is. This idea of filling things down. Well, filling right, up, left doesn't seem to make sense, but fill series. And now, how did I learn this? I learned this just by messing around. I didn't read this in any help menu. Like I say, I've never read an Excel manual. You know, I've read maybe a few pages at a time, and I kept ending up in this fill menu, and I noticed the word series, and I thought, oh, what does that do? Well, it does a bunch of things. It allows you to do dates and all sorts of things. Well, but you can see we want our series in probably in columns. We want it to be linear, and we want the step value to be 1, and the stop value to be 365. Let's see if that works. And it worked. Okay. So you have to have a starting cell. You'd think you shouldn't. Like I thought, look, but it doesn't give you a starting value. So you have to have a starting cell, and then have that cell selected, and then go fill series, and then just do the rest. And then you could have any kind of simple series that you want. Okay, so we have three different ways of getting the numbers from 1 to 365. That's the easy part. Now what we want to do is repeatedly sample from this. So we select those cells, and then we go to our sampling add-in in the Tools menu, SRS, Simple Random Sample, and the dialog asks how many samples. Let's pick, I don't know, let's just pick 50 samples. And our sample size should be the size of the class we want to model. Let's do a class size 28. Do we want it with replacement or without replacement in this case? Which would it have to be? With, because otherwise we'd never have any matching birthdays. Because the idea is that birthdays are independent events. So, you know, if I was born on January 1st, that does not eliminate the chance that someone else is born on January 1st. So we do that, and we quickly will get our samples, and when it's done, the screen will be split so that we can work with them. Okay, well now it's a simple matter of scanning through each column and checking for matches, and that's really tedious. And whenever something is tedious, that means the computer has to be able to do it. All right. Now there might be a function that allows you to look in a column and look for all possible data matches, but I don't know of it. And so what I figured out to the easiest way to look for matches was take the column and then sort it in order, and then I can easily, then the next thing, so my step is I take my column, I sort each column in order, then I create a new column which has the successive differences of successive cells, and then I can scan for 0, because you can scan for one number using the COUNTIF command. Remember we did that the other day. So what I'm going to do is, so the only hard part here is I need to take each column and sort them. Well, unfortunately, Excel is not as smart about this as it should be. There is a sort command, but it's really and it's in the data menu, but it really is clunky. What's clunky about it is the following. Let me just I'll show you how you can sort one thing. Let's pick one column. Okay, here it is. So it's a column of numbers, and if I wanted to sort it, well, even if you've never sorted something before in your life, you probably even see where it is on the toolbar. It's this thing, you know, AZ with an arrow or ZA with an arrow. It doesn't really matter which direction. Let's sort ascending. Click on it, and sure enough, we get an ascended sort list. And that works just fine, okay? We could select the next cell, the next column, and we don't have to click on this. We could click in the edit menu the redo command, which is Control Y, and that's a little bit faster. We can just go Control Y and it'll redo the sort. Unfortunately, it's not smart enough to redo moving over and selecting the column and sorting. That's what we need to do. We need to have basically a shorthand for move over to the next column, select the whole column, sort it. Okay. Otherwise, we'd have to do 150 kind of keystrokes, and it'd be so easy to get bored and foul up or start, you know, cursing and stuff. So, so I'll show you a method which works for this very simple case, but it also works for much more complicated situations. And what it's called is recording a macro. So it takes a while to do this without making any mistakes, but you can always restart again and stop again, and you know, eventually you get better at it. I won't say you get good at it, because I think it's a pretty hard thing to master, in my opinion. I always make mistakes when I do it. But all right, the first two columns are sorted. So now let me move to where I want to be, and let's just think through the process before we record it. What we want to do is move to the top of the column, shift click to the bottom of the column, press the sort button, and then move to our next destination. That's our entire thing. So let's do that now. So we're where we want to start. Now we need to turn on the recording button. And this is in the Tools menu. It's a macro. Macro is just really a synonym for computer program as far as I know, and it's of course record new macro. So I click on that, and then I can name it. I'm not going to give it a name, but what I am going to give it, very importantly, is a shortcut key. Control plus something. The key is any letter you want to choose, but you should probably choose a letter that's not used for anything else. So I'll say Control J, because that's probably not used a lot. Okay, and I'll click on OK, and now it's waiting for me to do stuff, and what I get is this icon called the Stop Recording icon. This button here is the off button. It says Stop Recording. This button here is just as important. It's called the Relative Reference button. You see, normally the way this would do the recording, if I didn't press relative, it would assume all of my addresses were fixed in stone, and so if I were to say select this next, if I were to select this cell here, it would record it as select F6, when what you really want it to be doing is saying select the cell that's immediately to the right of the cell we started with. And so it's very important that it be in that relative form. So you press down the relative button. It's hard to see, but click and press. Okay, so that's, and you can kind of see it's depressed. It's really hard to see on the screen. It's hard to see, and it's easier to see on this than on my computer. I'm going to move this icon away, out of the way. I don't want to get rid of it, but I'll move it out of the way so that I can see what I'm doing. So I haven't done anything yet, but now it's going to start to record my process. So I will go shift click, and it's recording that in a relative way. It's saying go all the way down, 25 columns or whatever. And then I will hit the sort button, and then I'll move over here, and then I will stop. And if all is well, it will work. And the way I'll know if it works is by typing Control J, and it better work. Yes! All right, well, and now this is a little bit tedious, but it's not terribly tedious because you just press the control button and I just hit a bunch of J's. Blah, 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 blah. I think. So it won't take too much time. It's still tedious, and if you think about it, just like it looks like I typed a J by mistake. What do I do here? I typed a J by mistake, but I haven't hit the Enter key. So how do I escape? Excellent. So now I go back, Control J, Control J. It's every time I do this, my floppy disk is making noise. I don't know why. It's slower than it should be, but. Now, if you wanted to, if you had to do a really big job, what you could do is write a new macro where you're doing the J macro 10 times and then do that. Sort of just like what we did to speed up the process of copying the software. And anyway, this process is not unimportant. Let's just stop here and move on to the next bit of the simulation, which is doing which is the extraction of the search for zeros. So now I'm going to move my my split. I'm going to move the split around a little bit because I need a little more room to think about what I'm going to do. So what I have here, at least the first these say 22 or so. These are all sorted. Okay, so let's just look at the 20 here, these 20 sorted samples. So now what I want to do is for each column have a new column of differences. Okay, and the original columns I think were 28 in length. From 6 to 33, that's 28. The difference column should be 27 in length because you're just going to have 27 differences. And so my very first cell would be equals. Let's use positive numbers instead of negative numbers. So I'll go equals this one minus that one. Okay. And now what do I do with this cell? How do I get the one below it? Yeah, it's a total black cross drag thing, and I drag it down. Oh, it's really hard to remember. I drag it down until, I'll just click a formula. This one says it's B19 minus B18. Oh, I have a long ways to go. I need to go all the way till it says B33 minus B32. So I'll just drag it until, still no. Almost. 32, 33. I think that's it. Yeah, B33 minus B32. So let's change the split so we can see the top and bottom of the different cells here. And again, the beauty of this is now what do we do with these cells? We just drag them over to the right. So we only had to type one formula, and we just do the black cross drag, out to, I think, here. And now, and was this 20 cells? By the way, if you don't like the columns to be in letters and want them to be in numbers, that's something you can do in the, I think, in the options menu here. I've never personally chosen that, but some people prefer that. So this was 20, I did 21 samples by mistake, so I'll just black cross drag backwards. Now I've gotten just 20 samples, so it's easier to do the arithmetic with that. So I have my 20 samples, and now what do I do with them? What do I want to do, say, with this column here? What am I looking for? Remember, search on 0, and the way to search is just there's a lookup. There's a match command, I think, which I forget how to use, which will give a yes/no to if something matches. But I don't need to be that sophisticated. I'll just use the COUNTIF command. I'll say equals COUNTIF the data. Oh, okay. Yeah, that'll mess up. Comma 0, close parentheses, and then fix the typo. And sure enough, I got one instance. And then once again, we just drag this over. And now, to count the number of classrooms that had matching birthdays, we do another COUNTIF on this row. And so I'll do that right over here, say, and I'll say equals COUNTIF the row, comma 0. And we're done. We found 6 out of the 20 samples had matching birthdays, and we got a little more information. We found that there was one that had three matches, and 6. I'm sorry, 6 did not. Yes, I'm sorry. Right. We looked for 0 rather than positive because that's just easier to do. So 14 out of the 20 had matches, which makes more sense. If you wanted, you could take the data here and extract the non-zero ones and do medians and means and so on, or do a histogram, whatever your heart desired. But the nice thing is it's a very, very easy and fairly quick way of getting to this step. And so 14 out of 20 is 70%, and I bet that's close to the theoretical probability. By the way, if you want to do those theory numbers, they are in Excel. If you look at the function thing, if you just click a blank cell, and go to the function paste thing, you get a list of all the functions. And if you just do statistical and look for stuff like binomial distribution, permutation, binomial coefficient, they're all in there. And so if you want to do permutations and combinations, the appropriate functions are in there. I frankly don't remember their names. Whenever I need them, I just kind of browse around for them myself. Okay, so this is an example of something that I would call moderately sophisticated, and really the sky is the limit with Excel. I really hope you play around with it more. I think it's a very flexible tool. Your students often own it, which is in many ways an advantage over something such as Minitab, which is even more sophisticated in many ways. But Excel is something that's like in most people's pockets now, and just a little bit of effort can get lots of exciting statistics, lots of fun things you can do both for you and for your students. So I think it's lunchtime. Thanks. Oh, and if you have any questions when you're back at home, feel free to send me email. Do we have a list of email addresses? I don't think we do. Okay. Well, and you just use my last name, and it's at USF, but USF didn't get an email, didn't get on the internet before the University of Southern Florida, so it's usfca.edu. So that's Zeitz at usfca.edu. I'd be happy to help you out anytime.